And we are live. Hello everybody. If you are watching this on the video on demand version, probably skip to about 30 seconds ahead because the first 30 seconds we're just going to be getting the live stream ready. With that being said, we're going to be going over a lot in this video. It's going to be a very educational video. We're going to be going over how to use technical analysis, how to use TrendSpider, how to use it to help you trade better and be a better trader. Just going to give it about 15 more seconds and then we'll get started with the video. All right, looks like we already have 3 people in here. Yeah, so I'm here with the TrendSpider team today, guys. They're going to be showing you. Ooh, got a little bit of an echo. There we go. I think we're good. All right, so I'm here with the TrendSpider team today, guys. We're going to be going over a lot. Like I said, I'm going to hand it off to them in just a second. But if you do want to purchase TrendSpider, link is in the description. There also is a free trial version if you want to check it out first at no cost. So that's awesome. Yeah, but with that being said, I'll hand it over to you guys, and you guys could start, showing off the product and showing off all of its features.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us. You got Jake here, and then we have Brad as well on the line. I'm going to start off with just looking at a chart of Bitcoin and really just kind of lay the groundwork and go over a high-level kind of general overview of what we're seeing on the charts and some of the crucial levels from last week that broke down and then kind of recaptured for support. So first thing I want to do is kind of show what I would call maybe like the status quo moving average here, that Bitcoin has really had trouble at first breaking through and then recently breaking to the downside through. And so as you can see here, this is actually the 50-week EMA on the daily price action. So you can kind of see how this shorter term price action is being affected by these longer term levels. And you can see this is kind of a classic thing that happens. You've got an area of support that holds for a long time. All of a sudden it breaks down. But what's interesting here is when it did break down, we had an idea of what to look for here because this is actually one of the trend lines that was automatically found by the system. Which is nice because it's like, once something breaks down, you're trying to find what's the next level of support. So what I did was I can just go and turn on trends on or off. Right now I have these locked in, so the trends feature isn't on, but Brad will go a little more in depth there on his segment. But for me, I really wanted to highlight how these longer term levels really hold. And then you can see using a combination of the moving average and trend lines, especially this downward sloping channel, really helped to find, where was support. It really wasn't. Well, it was here, but then once we broke down, this trend line has been, pretty hardcore support now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well over 7 or 8 times here. And so it wasn't shocking that we did find catch a bid here after breaking down through. So one thing that I also wanted to point out, on top of being able to kind of make your technical analysis more efficient and consolidated with the ability to overlay these time frames, the ability to automatically overlay trend lines based on whatever your preferences are. The ability to create alerts around these areas is just as important. So what I'm going to do here is you can see, if I zoom in, that this area below, right at this trend line, was barely touched. There's a slight wick here, and I'm sure Brad probably knows how long this was more than me because I think he was watching the ticks here, but I doubt this was very long of a period of time. And so what you can do here is you can actually right click and create an alert at this line where you're not having to watch the screen constantly and see, okay, is it going to get to this line? You just have a simple alert system that you can create a margin of error. So like this particular area, if the price action didn't get exactly down to the support, we would have been able to capture it with this sensitivity feature, which kind of captures a margin of error around the line rather than just saying, hey, alert me at this exact price. So what I could do here, if we did, let's say, break down, which I don't think is too realistic at this point, but if we did, and I didn't think the price action was going to get exactly to this line, that's where I could increase the sensitivity a lot and maybe capture like a big move to the downside, maybe a liquidity push to kind of stop people out. And then, the price action would have been caught through this sensitivity. And then you would have been able to say, alert me when it either touches this area, actually breaks through this line. So there's different ways you can kind of make the condition to have the system look at these different areas for you. So it's not just alert me when the price is this. It's alert me when the price breaks through this area, just touches this area, or touches it and then pulls back, which would be a bounce here. So we'll just go here, name it channel support. If it did break down, if price broke down further, this may be an area I'm watching, and then the alert's created. So that's one way you can do it. You can do it on the trend line here, or who knows, maybe maybe a more realistic situation would be the price action coming down to test this previous area of support. You can do the same type of thing here with the alert. You can increase or decrease this area so you're capturing some of those wicks rather than having to worry about an exact close on the daily. You can go and say, all right, alert me whenever the 4-hour candle closes anywhere within this area, rather than having to wait for the actual daily candle to close. So that's really useful and really helpful when you don't have time to stare at the screen all day, or at night in the middle of the night when crypto's moving and you want to catch a nap. You can get these alerts through your phone or email, so you don't have to necessarily stay up all night watching this stuff. The chart, the platform will alert you when something important happens, and it kind of allows the market to come to you. A lot of the time, just impulsively buying or selling just because you're bored or just because everybody else is doing the same thing generally isn't going to work out. So allowing yourself to kind of have the market come to you by creating these alerts really allows you to kind of be less emotional and just kind of stick to a plan and a strategy without putting too much thought into it. So that's something that I wanted to go over. I personally do not trade crypto. I've always been in the stock market, but Brad, who is my colleague and really does a lot of crypto stuff as far as trading and TA, he's on here to join us as well and go over some of the charts that he's been trading over the last week, as well as some of the features that he kind of used on the platform that helped him kind of make better trades or just kind of get a secondary perspective. So I'll hand it off to you, Brad.
All right, Jake, thank you. Hey, everybody, how's it going? This is Brad from TrendSpider. I'm going to quick share my screen here. All right, so one thing I wanted to touch on quick before we dive too much into these unique candlesticks was, on any trend line that you draw on the system or the system draws for you, these sensitivity regions are pretty useful for especially catching wicks and just identifying zones. For me personally, one thing that I like to do is use them in, hold on, let me remove this. I like to use them as horizontal levels. So we'll go here, turn this orange. So let's say I'm using this level, whether it's a stop zone or a buy zone, or I have limits there and I want to keep a watch on them. It's pretty common for me to sleep through my trades. That's just the way I trade. I'm more of a swing position trader. And what I'll use, rather than having a hard stop in the books, I'll use an alert with a sensitivity region where I know that if price breaks below said zone or above said zone, I'm going to have limits triggered or a stop that, I want to consider monitoring. So it's very useful to me to get alerted into the night. I mean, there's other platforms where you can set alerts in multiple different ways. I think TrendSpider is the only one where you can have these sensitivity regions, which really allow me, like here, to highlight an entire zone of resistance rather than just one line. Let me try to move this over. So as you can see here, I mean, like if price was going to come up and test this zone, where I might have my pocket of buys is very subjective. But if I'm capturing and getting alerted when any candle breaks within this zone, that's pretty useful, especially since you have to keep your eyes on the chart 24/7, which has been one of the hardest things for me with trading crypto and having a day job. Is how do I watch the charts all the time? How do I, make sure that I'm alerted to every move that's going on? So, one thing that you can do is set these up like you would your positions. So say, I have an entry zone here, right? So this is my entry level and this is my stop level. What I will do is right click this, create an alert that's going to kind of have this sensitivity region all around the alert. So I will be notified when price would come down and break through here, so that I can manually stop rather than having a hard set stop. And that does save me, some time and some money. And it, sometimes can be useful. Sometimes I like to use hard stops, but I just want to go over that quick as one of the most useful features that I've seen, because the one thing for me, especially in crypto, it's a low liquidity kind of market. And especially with lower cap altcoins, you can see them pushed beyond regions and just wick right back up. So if you see a huge dump on an altcoin like we did on TRX, we saw TRX drop to 150 and then shoot to 220. We're going to cover that in a little bit. I was in a trade in the 180 level and I didn't stop out. Why? I was notified of what was going on, in the market conditions. And I just kind of like let that ride and manually watched it. Within 5 minutes, we were back up at 199. So it kind of protects you from getting wicked out, especially when you're using leverage positions on BitMEX. It's a little bit more risky to trade this way, but I think it's like very important, when you're using low leverage or spot buys, to manually monitor your stops rather than having your stops set in the books. A lot of people like to do predefined stops of 1 to 2%, so that's understandable too. But I feel for people that they're tired of being stopped out, so they don't put a stop, is a very dangerous way to feel. So this is kind of like a way to meet in the middle, especially if it's a coin that you're looking at holding. So that's pretty useful. And before I go into these types of candles here, do we have any questions in the chat, Phil?
No, the chat's been pretty quiet. There is about 6 people in the stream right now. We've been hovering between about 5 and 6. There might be more questions once it converts to a video, and people might leave questions in the comments. So if you're watching this on a video version, if there's any questions, you could leave them on the video, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into here into a proprietary candlestick that we only have. Oh, sorry, I'm going to shut down my Slack here. That we only have available in TrendSpider. So you'll look at this and you'll be like, what is this? Like, I'm not sure. I've never seen this candlestick before. Pretty much this candlestick is called a raindrop candlestick. What it is it identifies pockets of volume on your chart rather than having volume on the bottom. So what you'll see is a VWAP close for the first half of the day, a VWAP close for the second half of the day. Well, you'll see body here. You can think of this as thicker volume. So as we moved up, we saw thick volume supporting to the top side of today's raindrop. And we saw it yesterday. And what did we have? We had yesterday's daily on OMG transition into a push up to this blue doji resistance zone that we'll get to in a moment. But that's kind of what these candlesticks are. They're derived from 2 points of VWAP and a middle VWAP point, and then they illustrate volume on each side. And they're useful in a couple different ways that we'll go over. But the one thing I wanted to go over today in particular was what is called these blue raindrops here. Blue raindrops are formed when both sides of the VWAP for the day close together, so creating kind of a true doji. And after studying these for a long time, especially in crypto, what we see a lot of times is high volatility move off these blue dojis. As you can see on the daily chart for OMG in this example, we don't get a whole lot of blue dojis. We had a couple here that preceded a very large move to the top side, a ton of volatility. What we're going to be breaking down today is this past, last couple months of price action here. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is I am printing this, I'm highlighting this zone, as a zone of resistance. So we have a lot of, we have a lot of volume of candles here. And where is, if I'm drawing levels on a candlestick chart, we'll switch over to the regular candlestick chart so we can see it. But if I'm drawing levels in here, I may not know where exactly I want to put it. Like, do I want to put my shorts here? Do I want to put my buys here? Where do I think the concentration of volume is here? With regular candlestick, it's not very clear. I mean, you have some dojis here and you have some area of constriction. But when, especially when you look down here, you really wouldn't ever identify this zone. But our most recent move up, we've tested this zone, not what you would normally in price action think, which would be the bottom side of these dojis, but we moved to the top side of this blue doji here. And that seems to be very important, when we're kind of looking at these. A lot of time what I'll do is like I trade off regular candlesticks and I use the raindrops as a point of reference to get an idea of kind of how the volume's flowing and where are areas of support and resistance. So, especially when you see a lot of chop like we do here, we're highlighting these areas as resistance. But the main thing to focus on here is we had a blue doji print, and then we had a large move down, large volatility move down. I don't think that it's accurate to say every time you see a blue doji print, it's accurate to say which way they're moving. I'll use things like the RSI to kind of get a gauge on that. For instance, in our most recent blue doji move down, what that printed on September 26th, I also noticed the RSI starting to curl up too, right? So we made a lower low in price, RSI was moving up, we had a big move to the top side. But what we'll see here is like, we're kind of, dancing along this level right here, blue doji, big pullback. Blue doji, large move down. We have a blue doji and we have a bunch of days in here where we're just kind of floating around, and we had today into yesterday one of the biggest upside movements that we've seen for a USD pair altcoin in a long time. And this is just a volatility move that is almost identical to both of these measured moves if you look at them. So what blue dojis can be useful, if you're trading derivatives or options for some of these assets and you're looking at a straddle where you want to get, kind of hedged on both sides, they can be very lucrative to tell you that volatility is coming. But also, I like to use them as support and resistance zones. So we're going to go over to the Bitcoin chart after this, but this was just a beautiful example of, kind of how price reacted to these blue dojis. You see price restricting. It almost restricts to a point where it cannot restrict anymore. We try to break out. We reject it to the downside. And if you look at this real close, you can see the volume on the second half of these days. Like, look at this one. We tried to push back up. We tapped resistance right here, and most of our volume for the day was to the downside. The next daily candle, we saw almost a 4% move down off that red raindrop there, almost a 10% move down by the end over here. So what you can do is you can get in position with a tight stop, and you can kind of move your stop down along with these candles on the daily and kind of read how volume is printing. When volume's printing to the low side of a candle, we're more than likely going to continue down. What we see a lot of times is we see when price is restricting, like we see here, which was almost a blue doji print here, is very close. We saw a red raindrop followed by a green raindrop that printed. At the end of the print, we saw most of the volatility here and then a breakout in price, which did not have a lot of volume with it. And then we saw the follow through to the top side, in the next daily candle. So, one important thing to look at here is, if you were trading this raindrop candle right here, you'd say, okay, we pushed up to a level of resistance and we were able to still close this candle green. More than likely, we're going to follow it to the upside here. And the same thing could be said to the downside. All of our volume was restricted to the bottom half of the candle, and then we pulled down, for a pretty significant, almost a 20-cent move there. I'm going to move over to the BTC chart now. Just give me a second here. Okay. So we're going to look at this on the scale of Bitcoin. We're going to take a look at May. So May, we had a blue doji print. We had a false break to the downside to this weekly 7.4 level, and then a huge move to the upside, right? We hit the 13.5, which was a weekly. And so huge volatility projected off this. But while I'm saying that you can't just go, hey, this is a buy signal, or hey, this is a sell signal, this is a signal that says, hey, watch what's going on. So we saw a break to the downside, but we held the level that we needed to hold. Honestly, if we would have broken below here, I feel like we would have fallen a lot further. But because we were able to hold this 7.4 as a gain, we ripped to the upside. 7.4 has played like a pretty big level in the past. When we go zoom out to the weekly, you'll see 7.4 was the level that we rejected that sent us to 3K. So after we hit, we tested 7.4, we failed, we floated around 6K for a while, and then we had our big breakdown. So that is why it was a level of my interest, of something that we wanted to hold if we were going to continue this bull market. As paired with a blue doji here, where I knew that volatility was coming, paired with the overall trend being up, right? So that's how you kind of calculate all of these things together to aid in your analysis, not just saying, hey, there's a blue doji, I'm going to go long. And another interesting thing that we had after all this long-term consolidation over the past 3 months in this zone here, we saw a blue doji print around September 10th. Now, this formation was weakening, right? We were testing this 9.6 weekly over and over and over again. Eventually, it was going to break. But at no point during this 3-month consolidation pattern did we see a blue doji. When we did, I started to get interested. But why did I get interested in it? I wanted to see where momentum was going, because not necessarily saying this is a buy signal, but it was a signal to me that we were coming to the end of this longer term consolidation, and Bitcoin was going to make a big move, whichever way it was. If we look at the daily RSI, I mean, we were really failing to get over 50 and hold it. Especially after we printed the blue doji, we saw a little bit of a move up, and then we just saw momentum completely just fall apart, where we fell all the way to the 9.6 weekly and shot back up, of course, because there's buys there. But momentum just could not bring it higher, and eventually price became unrestricted, and we saw that 30% move to the downside. Now, over the past week and a half, or let's say past month or so, I was getting a little, itchy, because we had 2 blue dojis print in this $8,000 zone, right? So we have our weekly at 8.2, we have our weekly at 7.4. And I was just kind of like thinking, I'm like, what is this? How is this going to play? Is this going to play our short sellers going to be rewarded that are shorting this level right here? Like, I really doubt it. And then we saw this huge liquidity breakdown to the 7.4 weekly right here. And I was like, okay, this is our level to hold. It's been my level to hold this entire bull run. Like, let's see, what's going on here. And then we had a huge move up. So what you're looking at here is like these blue dojis were more or less preceding this massive volatility move that we saw here, which was literally one of the biggest moves in Bitcoin that I've ever seen. It was almost $2,700 in one day, off of these blue dojis here. So what you can, tell is that, like, either one, we were going to break down, most likely to, this 6.4 weekly, which would have been a huge move. But I paired that, with this 7.4 weekly, and I was like, okay, we break this, that's fine. We're going way lower, but this is a good level to hold. And for intraday scalping, what I like to do is break this down a little bit further, use the same concept, saying volatility is preceded by this blue doji on a 2-hour scale, which seems to be kind of the sweet spot for Bitcoin. We're going to let it load here for a second. Okay, so let's act like none of this price action exists for right now. Scale this in. Okay, so what I like to do is, like when I drew these areas of resistance in red was like around here when we were dropping them, right? So at one point, like, this was green up here, right? We were using this level. We bounced it again, we bounced it again. Every time we touch a level, what do we know? It dries up liquidity, right? So the more and more that they push on a level, the higher probability is is that that level is going to break. And then we saw, a beautiful move down here, and then a bunch of 2-hour candles that they were trying to get over this zone as resistance, rejected perfectly. Where did we reject to? An area of blue doji 2-hour support right here. So we floated around this area right here, and where did we shoot up to? We shot back up to the 8.2 level. So this was a perfect short into your profit targets at 7.9, accumulation at the 7.9 level with an easy stop below, a couple percent below, probably would have put, stop somewhere around here below. And then a big, we saw blue dojis on the 2-hour printing here. So I knew volatility was coming one way or another. And, took this trade off this support. Boom, we hit our 8.2 weekly. And then what do? We printed a blue doji right here, which was showing me that volatility was coming again. We tracked up and then had a huge move down, completely melted through these levels to the 7.4. On our way back up, we respected this level again because we pumped straight into 8.6. We printed another blue doji before one of the biggest candles that I've seen in a long time. I mean, this is just a monster of a candle. I'm sure there were some people that made a ton of money on this move, but it was preceded by a blue doji above former resistance, now turned support. So once this closed here, we saw a huge movement to the upside. So these types of candles are very interesting because they don't exist on other platforms. So it's unfair to say that other people are trading them or even using them for their edge. But what you guys can do is you can start studying how price reacts to the support and resistance horizontal levels given by your lower time frame blue dojis. And there's some pretty interesting things you can find. I mean, this would have been an amazing opportunity to go long straight through this daily level of interest right here at the 8.7 level. And we just absolutely mauled. I mean, I had in my profit targets like the 9.6 level. I mean, we went absolutely crazy. So, that's kind of like a little breakdown on like how you use blue dojis, how they're derived, and their best use cases. I think there's a lot to be learned about, what is the best use case for raindrops. We're always studying the best, and, we're always open to other members of the community bringing stuff and their findings to us as well. So I'm going to get off the doji a little bit. We'll go out to the Bitcoin weekly here just to give kind of a recap of what I was seeing. So, let me plot one more line here because this was pretty beautiful.
We have a quick question in the chat.
Sure.
John Costello asks, I've been through 2 halvenings. The run is usually after the halvening. What do you guys think?
I mean, that's an interesting call. Do I think that we're ready for a bull run yet? No, I don't think that we're in a bull run yet. I think that bear market rallies can be vicious. They can look like bull runs, but before every bull run, you will see larger term consolidation. I believe, if we can consolidate above this 8.274 level, I think that we're going to be near a bull run sooner than later. But we can't start talking bull run, at least for me. My level in the sand this entire time, and we'll go to the daily here, because I've had this level for, since we were at 3K, has been this 8,000. Oops, sorry. Gotta go over here. Hold on a second. Has been this 11,500 zone here, which isn't, it's not exactly as clear on the weekly. This is why I always tell people, like, go weekly down. So you want to draw the levels of gain on the weekly and work your way back. So like here, we never were able to close a weekly above this 11.5 region. If we had, my bias would have most likely been full bull market. But why did I think that that level was one that we need to gain and hold to be a bull run? Because it's the exact same level that sent us into the bear market. We pulled back from highs, which we'll see here. We pulled back from highs, we tapped the zone, we made our way up, and we made our first failure to gain on the weekly. That's what this is right here. We pulled back down to a level which was our previous support. I mean, it's the only weekly real support that we have here is around this cluster here. and we shot back up to about 11,492, and we failed it. And this failure proceeded to bring us all the way to 3K at these levels. That's how trend work. That's how price works. If we were going to be in a bull market, we would have printed this weekly, this doji. If you all remember this madness right here, we would have printed this shit above 11.5. There's no reason why they printed it below, other than they were trying to paint this as a zone, a barrier zone. And as you can see here, we had a lot of trickery. We had a lot of pushes above this 11.5 weekly. And when I move this, what do you see? I mean, this is an exact doji. So what I'll use is these dojis on the weekly to get an idea of where very important levels to gain are. So if we would have gained this level, we probably would have tested it, and we could have broken out higher, much higher, and just gone on a straight bull run. But bull runs don't happen like that. They happen after long-term consolidation. So one could argue that this is long-term consolidation. That's kind of, up to your own opinion. But for me, this was the level that we needed to break to be bullish. And this is why I was shorting heavily and selling my bags of Bitcoin in this zone. To be completely honest, I sold Bitcoin at 7.6. I sold it at 10. I sold it at 11. Sold it at 13. I mean, when you're trading, especially a position trader, you want to take small profits, let your position run, and then eventually move up your stop and let the market take you out. So that was my play here on Bitcoin. But this is the big level to watch. If you see Bitcoin break above 11.5 and hold it on the weekly, not on the daily, not on the 4 hour, not on the 5 minute, you can start to get bullish. And I understand that this is probably not the point where people want to be buying the breakout. I think, if you're hoarding Bitcoin long term, getting into a nice average around this $8,000 to $7,000 zone is great, because the projected targets as we move up out of this zone, especially when we take the fib here from the previous move, more than likely we're looking at the top of this 1618 and the 32,000 region. So, there's plenty of time to party. And I could be wrong, but I feel like we're a little bit of a ways from that. Hope that answers your question.
Brad, do you mind share my screen again real quick? I just want to show a cool example of raindrops, how you can utilize them. A couple of case studies that I mentioned that I don't really trade crypto, so this is a case study on some of the ETFs in the broad market. But IWM is a great example of this today. So what we had here, let me go to the raindrop chart, and you'll see here what we had on Friday was really telling. We had this really tight area of price action for 4 days straight. Very hard area of resistance here. And then you've got this raindrop poking its head out. And what you can see with this is you can see a ton of volume aggregating at the top of this price range, which was kind of setting up for a continued move up, which we had today. And even today, you can see that we've got that same type of look, with a lot of that volume focused at the top of the range, kind of almost looking like a balloon, if you will. Same thing with QQQ. We broke out of a really crucial area here through this resistance that's really been kind of holding since it started. This area started in July, ended in mid-September. But you can see same exact type of thing. And this can be utilized in any chart, not just broad market ETFs. I know this is more of a crypto heavy crowd, but I want to show you how you can utilize these in like an everyday type of utility. So
yeah, and those are great examples. I mean, we see those breaks all the time, and what you're really looking for is volume to be weighted to the top side of that daily. And for the most part, that'll show on a regular candle as a wick. But the nice thing about raindrops is you can see that kind of balloon to the top side, and either take an option or a leverage play for, to scalp in intra move.
Yeah, exactly. And so like here, sure, we've got a very strong move on the candle as well, but we really don't know anything about this volume other than what we can see on the volume bar here, which, we did have a slight uptick in volume here, but we couldn't really see where that volume was on the chart. And so you can see here when we go to the raindrop from this candle to this candle, you can see how much more conviction was at the top of this range rather than just showing that the close was here. Excuse me, that the close was here. So, you know, generally what I'll do near the end of the day, I'll start to look at these raindrops, because over the whole day, these raindrops are forming, right? So they're not just like end of day, they're here. So throughout the day, you can see this volume starting to form. And so generally what I'll do at, maybe 20 minutes before the close, I'll start checking out these raindrops to see where that volume is aggregating on the range. And then I can get a better idea of seeing, how does this look into tomorrow? Because if you see this on a Saturday or a Sunday, this particular kind of balloon looking candle, you've already missed the majority of the move on Monday. So looking at this maybe a little bit before the candle closes, in this case this is the daily candle, then it gives you a little bit more of an edge to see, okay, do I want to enter this? Are there buyers in control at the top of the range? And so you can get set up for the day ahead rather than having to, buy here when the move's already been made. So that's just something I wanted to quickly mention, but I really wanted to hand it over to Brad again. Just wanted to kind of share that with the volume profile on the raindrops, how you can look at those areas around those hardcore support and resistance levels.
Yeah, so the next one that I'm going to be getting into is probably a crowd favorite, maybe. It depends what type of crowd that we have. So, is taking a look at XRP through this entire move. We had these huge daily RSI divergences kind of moving out as we move down through here. Every single line that you see on the chart is switched on by the auto trend feature here. And what it does is it brings up a truth analysis line here in the bottom of the corner. So while the price action was right here, I have refreshed this recently, so it's showing lines that are most relevant to our price action right now. But what I did was kind of plot these very obscure body-to-body, longer-term trend lines that I thought were relevant. And if we zoom all the way out, I mean, like, these are lines that, for the most part, let's load some candles up here. I would not have been, drawing myself. There's no way I would have drawn this body trend line all the way down. It's probably likely that I wouldn't have drawn this trend line wick to wick either down here. This one was a very crucial one here. So we can see where, the system was picking up things that I would have never seen. So like one of the biggest things that I like to use TrendSpider for is idea generation that, supports my technical analysis and where I'm looking at. Right, so like I saw the RSI starting to diverge up. We continue to move down. I was aware that contracts were flipping on MEX for December futures at the end of the month. So, there's kind of a few signs once you trade crypto for a while that you can tell coming. Like they'll move the trend down until more new contracts open up. And then on that new contract open up, which was like right around here, you'll see a break. We saw a break of this major, kind of triangle that was identified by the system. These are levels of support and resistance that are just, the way I trade. But what I did see, pop up when the truth analysis line, which is here, was back here, was this big trend line and this big trend line to the outside. So what I used, and this had an alert on it before by just hitting create alert like Jake had earlier, is we came up and we made a move up, but this was my, take profit zone here. But I was watching this outer trend line to see how price would react to it. And it turns out that price came up and that was where we rejected more than anything. I mean, like my level of interest was here. We went way above. We could not close a body below this trend line, and then we retreated back down to our support dojis here before proceeding higher. And then when we made this break again, and I'm sorry I don't have it on the screen right now, but I had an alert set here to alert me when the 30-minute candle broke through this daily trend line. So I wanted to be alerted early when this broke. So it was broken. I watched for it to hold this level of support. And then we moved to the top side, which was the second zone of interest, and also this big outer trend line here. And then what did we have? We had a move that would have normally not been picked up by an alert, but because I had this sensitivity region here, I was notified that we were coming through my level and towards this level, zone here. So personally, I took all my profits off the table at that point. and just kind of watch this as I was seeing the RSI start to diverge on the daily. I mean, the whole time we were making higher highs in price. I mean, almost identical, like 74 on the RSI the whole way. So that's like a big thing for me is when I start to see the momentum turn. It's like I see the big push. This is our highest momentum, biggest buyers. Then we saw follow through, continue to make higher highs and higher highs. But eventually we're going to pull all the way back. And where do we pull back? We pull back to our zone of interest here. And it was off this trend line here. And now we have a new alert set on this trend line with a new sensitivity region to track as we move sideways and potentially break out. This can be useful on any of these horizontal rays here because I can also create an alert here that will notify me, over the next 7 days if a candle prints, 4-hour candle prints, breakthrough, touch, or bounce here, right? So all of a sudden, I'm tracking if we break out of here and we test here, I really know I want to start looking at this price action because it's very bullish. There are guys that will buy this level of support here and just kind of ride it all the way up. If I'm already in position like I am right now off this level, I will just monitor for these two to break, and I have my stop, around my level here that's monitored by alerts as well. So that's pretty great because especially when you're tracking a position with naked PTs where your profit targets are not already preset, you can have a really good idea of like how price is moving out of these zones and through your zones of interest without actively having to look at the chart. I mean, like I'll be at work, I'll be busy doing something else, and XRP can make a huge move, without me even looking. So I want to make sure that I'm notified when, any of these big zones of interest are breaking. And we saw the same thing on NEO recently the other day. And this is something else that I want to get into, but we saw a big move up where I was notified here of taking profit. And of course, we failed to gain this zone and it was a perfect zone to take profit. What I want to go over a little bit here, before the end of my presentation is our strategy tester. So what we have, in front of you is well, first of all, on TrendSpider, you can strategy test any strategy you want without having any PineScript code knowledge, which is very, nice. It's a visual interface like this. You put your conditions in that are basically, I wanted to watch when the RSI crossed up above a constant value of 50. So we have the value in the middle, and I was tracking, and just testing how this will do. I'll have my stop loss at 1%, and I'll exit after X amount of candles. And we can go over here, and we can test it, and we can see the return, right? So the net profit over the last 2 years as OMG has kind of fizzled has been 300% when the asset's done 53%. And this is a very negative 53%. This is a losing strategy, but what it is it's a running strategy. So every time that a win hits, you're looking at 100% ROE compared to your 1% loss. And it's a good, visualization on how risk management can save you. And you can actually have a losing strategy that's a huge winner over time with the right risk management principles. But the interesting thing here is that we got our entry, and the strategy tester will put this price explorer map on our chart like we have here. So let me minimize this. And this is a price projection of the average of how all the trades that were analyzed in the data that I just show you played out on a chart. And it's pretty interesting here because, we were projecting a big move coming off this entry, and we had a massive move. I mean, this was before any of the China news or anything. This was back, on October 21st. So this would have been your entry. And, that was just a simple RSI cross. And you see, kind of the potential that you can have ranges all the way up to, nearly a 4 or 5x gain. And as you kind of refine your strategy, basically what you can do is set up alerts that will ping you and say, hey, when these conditions are met, I want to buy, and you get pinged for an entry. And you can also back test how that entry will perform and where your stop should be preset, so you can get a gauge on what you should be looking for out of the move. And this this one was absolutely beautiful, how we moved off this like 4 days, 5 days later, all the way to our zone of interest over here. I think one of the last charts that I want to go over is BAT. Hold on one second. Okay, so BAT is another good example of, I think it was on the monthly, or actually on the weekly. Okay, so we're going to turn on MTFA here, which will allow us to put another time zone that we're looking at. We're going to turn on the monthly VWAP, right? So we get a gauge of interest. And then we're going to turn on our auto trends here. Now, this is body-to-body auto trends, something that I would have never, taken. I never would have drawn this. But it's interesting, the ideas that TrendSpider kind of puts out in front of you, right? So when we saw our breakout of BAT this past week, we saw it break out when we broke out of this random trend line here. And we had, almost a 15% move off this trend line, but we still weren't able to close the weekly above it, which is very interesting and honestly very telling that more than likely we will continue in this zone until we have a true breakout more than just move straight up. I would have loved to see this print as a green candle out of this, but as we were tracking it all week, this was a huge move to the upside, and our projected region of where I thought we were going to go was the monthly VWAP. If you guys don't know anything about VWAP, VWAP is volume-based average price. It's basically the average of, if you were buying every one of these candles the same amount on this weekly, where would be your average entry, right? So that's like the average of where people are at. In this case, it's around the 4,300 Satoshi level. So this is somewhere where I was looking for it to push from. Of course, we failed, and now we're probably more than likely going to bounce back in between here. But this is a pretty interesting look at something, all I did was I just came to this chart, a bare naked chart. I can turn all this stuff off, turn MTFA off. We have a bare naked chart. One click, boom. I have my zone of interest. And that saves me a lot of time. And what it also does is it keeps me unbiased, because I may draw certain trend lines or certain horizontal levels to support my midterm bias. Whereas TrendSpider is the computer. It does not care, what type of money I make or what my personal bias is on the stock or the crypto pair. All it's doing is using its algorithm to plot the most relevant trend lines. In this case, this seemed to be a very relevant trend line, because let me lock this here quick. When we move down to the daily, let me go back here. Sorry about that. So when we move down to the daily here and we turn trends off, I'm actually not sure why it's not showing that. Okay, so when you look at the daily for this candle, and I apologize, but we had 2 to 3 daily prints above this zone. So, playing the breakout of this zone with an alert set was very lucrative, even though we ended up closing the weekly back in this triangle here. So, one thing that I like to do is intraday scalp off signals that I get on the weekly chart from the auto trends in TrendSpider, which I think has been pretty powerful. We'll see it here on Link. We'll take a look at Link quick. So, Link was another great example. TrendSpider picked up this falling wedge pattern here. We had a break of the pattern here along with our support region. And where did we run? We almost ran 3x to the top side here, which was pretty amazing. And what's a way to identify that we're losing momentum? We had this big RSI divergence on the daily at this high. So, you kind of should have known that, we're coming to the end here. And more than likely, we're going to try and fall lower. We lost this daily level here. So in my opinion, we'll probably be coming closer to test these daily levels mid-range. But, definitely a very interesting setup, because we had such a massive move out of this triangle. And it's, more than likely not a triangle that I would have drawn myself. But aside from that, it's just when I'm analyzing lots and lots of charts, it makes it, much quicker for me to put on these auto trend lines and just get ideas fed to me rather than me having to come onto any charting platform and kind of decide what I think is relevant. The system does it for me. So I think that was pretty much it for my part of the presentation here. We'll kick it back to Phil. But do we have any questions before we go on? And we could talk a little bit about Bitcoin on a weekly level if you guys want, or if you want to talk any other stuff, any other crypto pairs. I'm happy to go through them.
We had one other question. It was more of a fundamental question, not really a TA question, and that was about China. China is very bullish now. Why the sudden change? Question mark, question mark. I'm not sure if you wanted to just give your personal opinion on that. I know it's not completely.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I think that's pretty interesting. I also think that crypto news is a very manipulatable market base. So we have a lot of new traders in the space that is like, China's bullish. I should be buying Bitcoin at the top at 10.7. It's like, honestly, the best way to perform in crypto markets and what I've had the most success with is accumulating projects that you like with real value over the long term, and look for these longer term divergences on big down moves. I mean, we had a beautiful bear market, weeks and weeks, and we had these big divergences popping up. And that's when you want to be looking at these altcoins and things like Bitcoin to move forward. The problem is with Bitcoin moving straight up from here, regardless of whatever fundamental news, is that you have to think about who's going to be buying. I would think that it's fair to say that retail investors are not necessarily keen to Bitcoin after the huge sell-off, and I don't think that they'll start buying until we can break out of that $20,000 high. I don't think we're going to see new money enter the space for a little while. So when you see news like that, in my opinion, we pumped off the 7.4 weekly. It didn't really have anything to do with fundamental news. Saying China is big on Bitcoin is so hard, right? Because there's no owner of Bitcoin. It's just a protocol. Like, nobody owns it. It is the value that somebody wants to take it from you. It's just like gold. It's worth absolutely nothing unless the next guy thinks that it's worth something. So as far as like a reserve currency for countries, there's a lot of different, things going on with the Lightning Network that are positive for Bitcoin. Bitcoin on the fundamental level is becoming more and more of a useful day-to-day asset for a plethora of different things. But, it's hard. I think it's one of those things where you kind of want to store some for you and your family, put it away, and not get so emotional on the week-to-week what the news is. Because a lot of times you'll see that news come out at the top, and that's why we're pretty heavily on pushing technical analysis, because you would be very happy after you bought the 7.4 weekly and we're pumping due to China news, but you're always going to lose if you're buying China news. It's just the way it goes.
Truth.
Definitely very true. So I guess take away from that you should probably learn to do technical analysis if you want to improve your investing and trading strategy, because relying solely on, like, I think news plays a part, certainly, especially in like a psychological factor, but you can't rely just on news to be a trader, because once the news drops, there's going to be a ton of other people who also see that same news. So I definitely think it's worth it.
Let's take a look at TRX right now. We had Justin Sun all weekend pumping TRX, right?
Mega Corporation going to be partnering supposedly with them.
Yep, exactly. And what do we have? We had this huge move down on the Bitcoin run up, which is expected. Alt's always dropping Satoshi value after a big Bitcoin run up. But we held this technical 181 weekly. I mean, this was huge. It was what sent us to our newer low here, which presented an amazing short opportunity. And then it was the level that we rejected multiple times. But one thing is, when we came up to test this 181 weekly here, we never made a lower low. So to me, on the daily time frame, that was when we flipped the trend. And it was supported by a breakout of this larger TrendSpider wedge. So we were able to reject, gain this weekly. Then over the past week and a half, we flirted around this weekly. We made our move up. And this was what I call like a false liquidation hunt, especially on BitMEX. You saw TRX dropped to 150, right? I mean, it was an amazing buy opportunity. The next day, you see Justin Sun coming about this big news. But what did we hold? We held the technical level that we needed to hold here, regardless of whatever news or whatever, big corporation, fundamental things that were pushing it on the back end, which most certainly surged it off this weekly. It still plays in line with the technicals because we have a daily level here at 230, which is exactly where we pushed to today, and we pushed off the 181 weekly here. And where's our next weekly? It's at 318. I mean, we got some room. I'll go to the weekly chart here for a second. Oops. Yeah, so like to me, this is where I was drawing this 181 weekly. It's been, it was our only weekly. I mean, if we fell, it's a little funny that we started to print some divergences in here because there was a point in time where I was like, we got air down to 55 sat. I mean, this is going to get real ugly. Luckily, they were able to gain this 181 weekly back, which is what you saw. You saw the pull down and the print above. So you saw the candle body for the weekly print above that 181. And more than likely, I mean, we're going to push into this zone, probably this doji here, 308, 318. Because we don't have a lot of weekly resistance yet left. We have some weekly resistance here. We have some weekly resistance that lines up with this 300 Satoshi price target here. But like, where is the majority of our resistance? It's right here. I mean, it was the level that sent us to multiple highs. It was the bounce that made our lower high. We held it here. We bounced again. We tried to bounce again, and we finally broke through. And that's what kind of gave us the elongated bear market here. So what I would be expecting is, I'd keep a close eye on the 50 RSI on the weekly over the next, couple weeks. If we can gain and start to hold this 50 RSI, I think, 318 is pretty conservative. I feel like, we could push way higher for TRX. And TRX is not a fundamentally sound coin, but the technicals are lining up to, on a lot of these altcoins, to support a major run. I mean, we can take a look at ZRX too. We had a similar, and here's an example of me using an alert as a soft stop. So this was my area of buying, right? It was like a very elongated accumulation. If we drop this weekly here, which was the bottom of this support, I was using TrendSpider alerts to kind of notify me of a soft spot stop because this was a spot buy. If we were to break here, I would have sold the position. Trade done. Easy as that. On the flip side, this was my big profit target region here. So I want to be alerted. But I'm not limiting in and leaving orders on the books. I can just wait for the price action to hit these certain levels and kind of watch it along the way. And then we saw a huge move out of this zone here to our first, area of resistance. So now what we're looking for is we really want to hold about this 2100 sat level. I think if we can hold that and move sideways, we'll take a stab at 5483. But that's kind of how price works. Like we made our down move. Now we're looking for a higher low. When we get a weekly higher low, then I'll be pretty confident in a trend flip. For most major altcoins are setting up the same way. All right. So yeah, I'll leave it off to maybe if there's any other questions about Bitcoin, or we can go through any questions for the platform from anybody in the chat.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. We'll give it another minute, see if anyone has any last questions before we wrap it up. But
yeah. So Phil, what are you looking at heading into the next couple months?
I'm looking at x.r.p a lot. I'm looking, of course, at Bitcoin with its big moves it's been making. I'm trying to not let myself get prematurely excited for like a bull run that might be a little bit longer away than I'd like it to be. I'm kind of holding myself back a little bit, just really watching the charts before I'm making a ton of moves. XRP, Bitcoin, a little bit of Litecoin I've been looking at a little bit more, but That's mainly
Yeah,
it.
Litecoin had quite a fall, didn't it? It's crazy because they
Yeah,
had their halvening, big run, and then big fall. Like it's kind of crazy looking at Litecoin on the weekly.
yeah.
Um,
I've been looking at it as like a value play because of just how low it's gotten. I haven't checked the RSI on it in a while, but I'd imagine it has to be close to oversold.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're almost back down at the lows. I mean, we probably, ideally would definitely want, this is a trend break. So what we're looking for here is like more than likely a break from here, this level with some volume, which we've had here. So probably price will come back down to retest this. If we can hold this area of interest here, which is a big area of interest, like kind of like all through here, I think we'll be pretty all right on Litecoin. What you definitely want to watch out for is a break of this, because this is going to be a hard level to hold. But I think it looks pretty good, especially on the USD side. Litecoin's one that I've been interested to. I got a decent chart for ETH here too that I can go over real quick. But I think diversification into the altcoins is definitely a tricky market because you can make a lot of money, but also like it always sucks when Bitcoin's mooning and you're the guy holding altcoins, right?
Yeah, not a good feeling.
Happened to me too many times. Because when I first got into crypto, I was not a seasoned trader. And I bought, XLM, at 50 sat, like XRP, well under a cent. And they did these huge, insane runs, and like I didn't sell a lot of it, And what
Mm.
it kind of urged me to do was like, hey, you got to look at like what's kind of going on here. Like, why did you fail? And that kind of led me into like learning TA.
It's a
But
learning
with
experience.
yeah, after getting wrecked.
I missed out on $80,000 on Pearl off an ICO. I
Y'all
felt
ever
pretty
hear of
bad.
LangConnect?
What's
Like
that?
that? You ever hear of LangConnect? Like the Big Connect, it was kind of like that scam. So
Yeah,
it
the
was
whole lending crap, right?
Yeah, so it's like this ERC20 token. I bought it at ICO for 20 cents. I put in about 20 grand. It turned into 275 grand, right? Like it
Oh
was
my god.
huge, like big pocket of money. And the next morning I woke up and it was at 50 grand. It dumped like overnight, just all of it was gone. And I was so shook up that I should have just taken the 50 grand, right? I still have never sold that. It's worth $0 just because I wrote it all the way down because I was just too emotional, too invested in hitting that one big, home run. And I let not only the big money slip away, but even the smaller returns. I mean, like crypto was crazy back then, but so that's kind of what pushed me into the world of learning technical analysis and taking some of these crypto assets a little more seriously, because when you're on it and you know what's going on, there's so much money to be made. But because they trade 24/7, it's like extremely stressful. And I'm sure a lot of guys watching this right now are not professional traders. Like you have a day job. That's why we've developed these alerts, because you need eyes on the charts 24/7, and they can't be around. You got families, you got girlfriends, kids, whatever it is. And that's why we built these alerts to kind of monitor price for you in a bunch of different ways, and also like be able to back test the strategies that you're setting multi-factor alerts for, to see what the returns would be on those entry and exits. So it's kind of amazing to be able to refine a strategy, because to this point I had things that work for me, but I couldn't quantify it into a strategy that I could see it works on this crypto asset. The wins are there, the percentages there. We scanned all 3 years worth of data. We know this works. Now we can test it with live money versus blowing up accounts while testing different strategies. And I think like one thing we're looking for on ETH here is like, I mean, we've been accumulating around this like kind of 169 weekly. The next, we're in this downward channel here. What I'm really looking for is like, if we're gonna be bullish, like I'm looking for a break to the upside of 198. I personally took 200 shorts that I'm still sitting in right now, just kind of hanging out. Like I'm looking for another test of this 171 weekly before another move up. If we can hold that, great. If not, more than likely we're going to move back down lower. So like the best thing that we can see, for crypto and Bitcoin moving forward is a hold of the kind of levels that we're at. if you guys want a bull market, the best thing that you can see is just longer term sideways action from Bitcoin above the 7-4 weekly. I think we're in good shape. If we are to lose the 7-4 weekly, I think more than likely we're going to test 40, 48, 58, potentially 62. But, as price action develops, we just trade the levels. There's no way to predict that stuff. So take it one day at a time, and, use tight stops. You'll be fine.
Awesome. We have one last question in the chat. This is from x.r.p. 1%er. He says, where do you think the run for x.r.p. goes after breaking 36 cents? A very specific question.
Okay, we'll take a look at x.r.p. USDT quick. This is actually a chart that I don't even know that I've looked at for a while. I had a lot of daily levels on this. Okay, so let's look at this from a fresh chart real quick. First thing we can do is it's weird. I think if we're able to gain this level here, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, something's a little glitchy on TrendSpider right now. So I think it's we have a big zone of interest right here. So obviously we have our here, Jake, are you there? You might need to take over quick.
You want me to take over?
Yeah, I think my UI is having a little bit of trouble right now.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, let me make sure mine. Yep, should be good. So we're looking at XRP real quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
To tether over to USD.
All right. So I mean, without giving any kind of advice or any buy sell anything like that, that's not kind of what we're here for. But just to kind of look at the chart, one thing that I see right off the bat is the inverse head and shoulders here. So for example, here you can see we have kind of bottomed out. We've found two areas of consolidation dash accumulation areas here. You can see both times here that you had this this kind of big candle just taking out orders below. Both of these trying to kind of hunt for stops below. And so for me, the biggest thing would be to break 33. So let's see. I'm just trying to see where you're getting 36 from. The two things for me would definitely be 33 and then 34. As you can see, these two areas have been pretty crucial resistance since this broke down. This next area, if these two broke, would probably be this previous area of support here, which is right around your 37 area. So it really depends on which way you look at the chart, whether you're looking at horizontal areas, whether you're looking at just straight up trend lines. So if we turn on this just straight up trend lines here, we can see something a little different. We can see kind of more of a this symmetrical triangle starting to form here. So if I remove some of these horizontal levels, you'll see here kind of more getting close to the apex of this wedge. So it really just depends on how you look at the price action and which trend lines you're looking at. But either way, this area, the support area below, is definitely important for XRP to hold. And then 33 would definitely be an important area for me if I was trading crypto heavily. This would be an area for a breakout that I'd be watching for with conviction, not just a little blip above it, an actual close with some volume.
Yeah, and as you guys can see, I mean, look how fast Jake was able to, kind of analyze that chart. I mean, that's one of the beauties, because that's a pretty interesting triangle that was identified there that, is kind of obscure, right? I mean, it's hard to identify, but because the system's, taking into consideration the most recent price action, it's taking into consideration the most recent trend lines too, and the trend lines that are most relevant. One click, boom, like that, all of a sudden you got your triangle built, and it's something for you to look for. I mean, the one thing to look for here is to start clearing levels with some volume. I think XRP has been a big lagger, even though it's been running in this BTC pair. But as we all know, I mean, XRP can definitely surprise people when it wants to go. And that's an interesting IHS that you have there, Jake.
Yeah, no, definitely. It'd be interesting to see if it holds. Obviously, we definitely have to hold within this symmetrical triangle here for this inverse head and shoulders to hold. But the cool thing about this is what I would call this like little area in the coming 2 weeks or so. I'd say this is where the status quo is getting very close to changing. So we either break to the downside or we break to the upside, and that's where things start to get interesting. And so what I'll do, I'll just create an alert on both sides. I don't need to really be biased here. I just want to know, because a lot of the time, if you're taking a trade before the true breakout, either to the upside or the downside, you're kind of guessing on what's happening, unless you just buy on a false breakout and you get kind of destroyed there. But it's always better to kind of be on the lookout for a true kind of move with conviction rather than just looking for the first time price breaks through a trend line. It's very easy to have a false breakdown or false breakout. So what I've done here is, rather than me having to wait the next 2 weeks to see if this price action gets anywhere within this resistance or support, I put an alert on both sides of this triangle. So when the price action breaks through either one of these areas, I know it's time to either maybe look at going long or going short. For me, like I said, I don't really trade crypto, so I wouldn't really be trading it much. But this is the idea behind any trade. I use this all the time when I'm trading common stock, and it's just something that's really useful.
Yeah, and like you don't want to have your bias flipped in the interim, right? So it's like, price can go back and forth within your triangle as it moves to the right, but you almost are better off not even looking at the chart. Once you have these set up and you're confident in your setup, you trade the break whichever way it is. So you can set this up, go about your day, go about your week. Eventually, you're going to get triggered in one direction or the other, and then that the volatility with volume is going to follow. So that's that's a pretty useful feature, because especially when you're analyzing a lot of pairs. I mean, some crypto guys, like, they trade one or two. Me, I trade tons of different altcoin pairs, so I have to manage these setups on each one individually, and it's a pretty daunting task without these alerts.
Yep. So, well, I know it's been a little bit since we've been on, so I don't want to take everyone's time, but we definitely wanted to overview some of the most recent action on crypto, as well as kind of highlighting some of the basic functionality of TrendSpider. As you can see, it's really a charting platform at the base, but on top of that, all of the features here in this little menu bar really kind of focus on making technical analysis more efficient, consolidating the charts, and removing biases as well. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and we'll hand it back over to Phil.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. I thought we had a really good stream. A lot was said, a lot was shown. I think really showed off the features of the platform, of the software, of TrendSpider. Again, if anyone does want to get the product, I'll have a link in the description where you could grab it. Yeah, I think it was a really great stream, and I will catch everyone in the next video.
Thank you for having us, Phil.